morning, everyone, and a very warm welcome to the second edition of Festival of Marketing. Uh, Before I start with the panel discussion, I would actually request everyone to give a round of applause to our dear panelists. Thank you. So, the first panel for the day, talking about together for a durable future. Now, when we talk about a durable future, it is a time in an era where change is constant, where everything comes with its own set of challenges. It comes in waves, and I think what is important is not only navigating what is happening in the present, but also what is important for the future, preparing for the future. Uh, Now, when we talk about collaborations, when we talk about a durable future, it's time for marketeers that they are collaborating and partnering with the internal and external stakeholders in the decision making, in the entire process altogether. Collaboration in itself sounds excellent and very ideal as a theory, but again, it comes with its own challenges. So, Sana, if I start with you, how do you, see this? How do you balance the need for collaborations, also while maintaining the brand integrity as well as the vision that you hold for it?
Hi everyone. Thanks, Reema. So I think great question. So let me just draw the landscape here. So as a marketing professional, you never do things alone. It's actually a team that works with you. So it's the marketing team itself. You have internal stakeholders within the organization you work with, and you have a whole set of external stakeholders also. So it's a huge ecosystem that you work with, and aligning everyone to work with you is extremely critical. So what I would say is one needs to be first very clear what is required. So I think the strategic vision of any brand should be very clear. Like this is what we want to do, or this is the brand USP, and you communicate that very clearly to the internal stakeholders as well as external stakeholders, and that's how you kind of ensure that everyone is on the same page. If I give a few examples, let's talk about external stakeholders, our agency. So every marketing team has an agency or a number of agencies they work with, and they co-create those wonderful campaigns that you see. So what you see as the end result of any campaign is just the tip of the iceberg. A lot of hard work goes into developing that campaign, cracking the consumer insight, coming up with the communication idea, and delivering the final creative, right? So at all stages, the brief to the agency has to be very clear. What is it that the brand wants? And accordingly, when the output comes in, then of course the deliberation needs to happen, and you need to make decisions, based on how you want a campaign to go live, and then you proceed. Internally is another big challenge, where sometimes it's you have to also convince the internal stakeholders to see it from the point of view that you are seeing. So that would be my, initial thoughts. Thanks.
Anika, your opening thoughts on the balance of external holders while also maintaining the brand integrity?
So I think it's always in the context of where the business is and where your consumers are. There's a fundamental shift that's happened, right? So from a consumer point of view, two things have happened. One, obviously attention spans are now limited, right? So whatever the brand is speaking, the attention span of the consumer is now limited or has shrunk completely. And I think the other thing is just the plethora of content that is available, right? You are not speaking with one content piece about your brand, you're speaking with probably 200, and 100 of them are being done by some creator out there and not even by the brand. So in that kind of an environment, I think collaboration is extremely important. Agencies have been the biggest collaborators for marketing teams for years now. So this is not something new. But I think what has changed is, so the principles remain the same. I think from a principle point of view, as you collaborate, I would think of three things. I think one, you cannot outsource your brand thinking. I think that's the first fundamental, right? A lot of us feel like we'll get a great agency partner and then we can outsource the thinking to them and we will come up with something great. They may come up with a great campaign for you, but from a long-term positioning point of view, you cannot outsource thinking. So I think that's something that you need to keep internally. The second thing which happens as you go out and collaborate and talk about the brand is that most of the times you don't have internal engagement and internal alignment. And the brand speaks not just through an advertising campaign, the brand speaks through a lot of things. So I think driving internal clarity amongst your own stakeholders of who you are and who you want to be tomorrow is actually also a primary job of a chief marketing officer or a marketing team. So I think when those principles are done, that is when you go out and collaborate. Collaboration is a necessity. It's not a choice that you have anymore. So that will come in. And I think when you look at brands, it's what are the drivers of reputation? It's not just advertising, right? Your drivers of reputation, actually, if you look at your stakeholder pinwheel, they're investors, they're employees, they're consumers. There are many more than just, somebody who's buying your product, influencers. So I think when you're clear on your strategy and there is internal clarity in the organization, you will see that when you go out and collaborate and speak to these multiple stakeholders, chances are that you will come out as a stronger brand.
Understood. So, Anika, like we were also talking about it, that there are set of challenges that are there with internal stakeholders. That is the heavier one to collaborate all together. Can you give out some challenges that actually take place while we, set out with our internal teams?
I think a couple. One is that the question to be asked is that the long-term strategy or plan clear or not? When you have LTP clarity or long-term plan clarity, you will find that alignment is easier. Common goals and a lot of what you're doing from an external facing world for the brand, from a brand positioning point of view, needs to happen for internal and other stakeholders as well. So for example, if you have a brand key, do you also have an EVP which is strongly defined? And I think that's an equally important part of building any brand. So you do need to have an employee value proposition. You need to have a stakeholder promise, an investor promise, and then everybody just keeps on speaking about the same. I think that's the first level of clarity that I think is centrally driven a lot of times by marketing teams.
Understood. Similarly, on the same lines, actually not pretty much on the same lines, Anna. If I now talk about the external stakeholders, how do you approach these collaborations with different industries? How do you navigate that? Okay, this is something that is to be done. These are the segments that I want to approach. How do you approach those collaborations?
So maybe I can give two examples. First, let me take the example of dealing or working with an agency. Uh, I think the what we communicate to the agency has to be extremely clear. As a brand team, when we say this is the campaign that I want, this is when I want it, this is my consumer. Like I agree with Anika said, you can't outsource thought, you can't outsource the brand USP. That's something you own and you hand over to the agency in the clearest way possible, and then on that they build something valuable. So as long as that clarity of thought is there, I think that goes a long way in terms of collaborating and creating good content. Some other examples of collaboration could also be now a bit more towards, let's say, business related. For example, we are in industries where we work with. For example, when we expand territories, we have to look at who will be the person who will be managing the new business in that territory. It could be a new distributor, it could be a new key account that we're going to work with. So when you collaborate with them, of course, there are, common interests, and there are also conflicts of interest. So we have to address both. The idea is to ensure that it becomes a win-win situation. And in cases such as you're working with a key account, but they have their own private label, which is competing with their own brand, you take that into cognizance, but at the same time, you can't live without collaboration with those key accounts. So you work on a joint business proposal, and then you go into the market and you draw a win-win situation with clear demarcation that this is what we will do together, this is what I will do alone, and this is what you will do alone. I think those kind of conversations need to happen whenever you go for any partnerships.
Okay. Anika, similarly for you, like how do you approach these collaborations when you work across different industries, how do you approach them? What is your vision when you look into that? Okay, these are the partnerships which will be valuable to the company itself.
I think, of course, you have layers of collaboration, right? You've got the first layer, which is suppliers. Suppliers can be manufacturing suppliers, suppliers can be marketing services suppliers. I think when you outsource or collaborate there, the point to be kept in mind is that you don't outsource your core. So, for example, if uh, we manufacture fans, right? So we are making an IoT voice enabled fan. I would probably outsource the app development of it and the app management of it because that's not my core within the principles. But I will not outsource the core USP that we have from a supplier perspective. Second, when you collaborate, you will look at ecosystem, right? A lot of people do collaborate right now in terms of either like-minded brands or creating an ecosystem of services around your core product. In which case, I think the commonality of goal and purpose is important. If there is any conflict in terms of objectives, there will be a problem in terms of outcomes for both. So I think their like-mindedness in terms of goals is important. The third thing when we look at collaborations is customer value proposition enhancement. Sometimes you have to collaborate to get a technology in because that's something that you need to spec up your product much faster. Because I think speed to market is important, right? So when you are talking about success, you will talk about collaborations in the lens of, does this help me scale up faster? And does it help me enhance my customer value proposition? So a lot of times, collaborations with either technology providers would happen. Collaborations would happen with brands probably, which add back to your customer value proposition. Simply if you have to enter a new market or a new customer segment who's not familiar with you or who doesn't respond to your brand values as well, you will probably take a collaboration route because that will be much faster to build and much cheaper to build in some cases, right? So I think those are the principles that you would continuously evaluate as you build a business and a brand ecosystem.
You touched upon, I'm so glad you actually did, that you touched upon entering a new market or the usage of, new technologies, adopting new technologies. Sana, on these lines, like, how do you manage the risks that are associated with the adoption of new technologies or when you're entering the new market? What are the risks that you manage with the external stakeholders, per se, if I say? How do you look at it altogether?
So I would say, any foray into any new territory, new business, does always have an element of risk. So you always take that calculated risk at any level. So how you manage that, I think, is I would say you draw up scenarios. So you look at first you look at what is your objective. So if I am looking at adopting a new technology, if I am looking at entering a new area of business. Let's say tomorrow we decide to launch a new range of contact lenses, lens care solution, right? So we look at, okay, first question, does it even make sense for us to do that? Then why are we doing it? I think that why has to be very clear, basis which you do your risk assessment. So let's say we think that tomorrow the older audience is a very important audience for us. Like, people who cannot or who need reading glasses beyond a certain age, everyone needs reading glasses. So we decide that that's a new target audience we need to enter. But the risk there is the products, we have contact lenses designed for that, but that's a more complicated technology, hence a more expensive. So do we kind of put our resources as a company behind this particular target audience, behind this type of contact lens and go all out? Or do we not do that and instead put our resources into something which is more widespread as a consumer base? For example, let's say your color contact lenses, which can be worn by people who need vision correction or even people who don't need vision correction, even for aesthetic appeal. So once you're clear what is it that you need with that new foray, then you can draw a risk assessment. Okay, these are the known risks I'm going in with. It could be a higher cost, it could be a return which is not very sure, it could be a clash with a competitor, or it could be the stronghold of a competitor. And then you decide, okay, you know what, out of the 5 risks, 2 I can live with, but 3 I cannot, and these are like no-go. So then you drop the project. Or if you feel that, okay, out of this 5, in fact, I can live with all of the risks, provided, this thing goes through. And then you decide, okay, yeah, that's a calculated risk, let's go for it. So I think that's how I would approach.
Reema, I'd like to add one more thing there. I think what he's saying is absolutely right. There's also a very important factor of what's your right to win. A lot of times, you do collaborations for the wrong reasons. Um, a very common example these days, oh, I want to talk to the younger audiences, I want to talk to Gen Z. My brand and my business today cannot. So, let me collaborate and let me get a partner in which will help me do that. Now, if the fundamentals of your business or your product or your brand do not allow you to do that, even if you do the collaboration, you don't have the right to win with the Gen Zs, you will not be able to. So I think that right to win assessment is extremely important as you evaluate whether you're adopting new technology, going to a new market, getting into a new segment, etc. I think that's an important lens to look at.
So, while we talk about, adopting to new technology, how do you leverage these tools in order to enhance and also benefit not only your organization but also the external, stakeholders? How do you go beyond that limit and maintain? How do you leverage those aspects with them?
So you will obviously do the adoption only if it makes business sense, both from scaling up of business, giving you the ROI, maybe it's improved margins, maybe it's improved revenue, or maybe it's an improved experience, right? Those are the lenses. So either you'll reduce the cost, or you will scale up your business, or you will improve customer experience. And if either of the three, or 2 of the 3 check box, that's when you go ahead, right? So I think that's the simple principle that I would follow.
So, any add-on risks you would like to add to it that when again opening to a new market, that's a big decision that the business takes to bring up. There's new consumer, there's new insights that are required. What are some of the risks that you feel that you take into account while you're discussing, whether it be with your internal stakeholders or your external collaborations?
I think time horizon is extremely important, right? Because if you set out on doing a collaboration or doing something new, the biggest miscalculation that you make is actually on the time horizon. Something that should give you return in 5 years, as a business you want it in 3 years, and you hope that it will happen, right? So I think if your time horizon planning is correct, then all the other assessments usually a business would do, or a marketing team would do. You would do enough insighting on product relevance, on product pricing, or what's the insight that you need to take to drive the right product benefits and communication into the market. But I think for me, many times you see things failing just in terms of time of return. I think that's an extremely important criteria not to miss.
Well said. Similarly, Sana, if in a company with Bosch and Lomb, if I say, what strategies do you employ in order to maintain brand trust? Because it's a very sensitive, market rather. It deals with eyes. So when you talk about lens, when you talk about quality, what strategies are you employing? Especially, we are seeing examples where there's a widespread misinformation in the market. When you cater to Gen Z, of course, they're attracted to new things, with the colored lens. Especially if I speak about that, how do you maintain the trust in the consumers in the eyes of the younger, older, mid-aged audience?
I think good question. So if I just zoom out, a brand's core USP is actually trust, right? That's what you are offering. A trust in your promise, a trust in what you say you will deliver. So, in given whatever circumstance, even if people are not aware, or let's take contact as an example. So we are one of the bigger players in the country. So what we do is we talk about or we educate our consumers, not only just consumers, even eye care professionals for that matter, people who are in the retailer shops also, who will actually fit your first contact lens trial when you go there. We educate them as well. So all sets of stakeholders who are relevant, we educate them on basic contact lens category fundamentals. For example, contact lenses don't get stuck in your eyes. You see sensational articles that 10 lenses were found when someone washed her eyes or something like that. Uh, so we kind of just dispel myths. So it's a new category that people are entering to, and like you said, it's a sensitive one. People are always afraid to put something in their eyes. So what we do is we try and tell people the truth in the best way possible as a brand category leader. So we take out, if I just give a few examples, if you we take out communication on dispelling myths, like when you put a contact lens, it doesn't hurt your eye. It's actually very comfortable. You just have to try it. Uh, Contact lenses doesn't cause any sort of dryness, irritation. In fact, technology has advanced a lot. People can wear it for up to 15, 16 hours, whole day even, right? So we take that out. And also if, for example, apart from communication, we also follow very rigorously our quality procedures. So now I'm talking from a business standpoint, not just marketing. So our products are labeled in a way that every box is traceable. And because usually what happens is, as if someone wants to do a malpractice, they usually make a counterfeit of the category leader. So we have systems in place to ensure that counterfeiting is also not possible. And we also ensure that even our trade fraternity, like let's say the retailers, opticals, they also kind of follow our systems in place. And we take out communication from time to time to everyone, to kind of make them aware of any changes in the industry and new launches that are happening, right? So it's more about staying true to who you are as a brand, even if there are adverse or sudden misinformation or rumors spreading around. I think the core is you stick to your story, you stick to what you deliver, and that's how you kind of maintain the brand trust. That's what I would say.
Anika, you have any additional thoughts to add to it?
No, I think Sana has covered it well. The only additional thing that I would say is, of course, that, earlier it used to be brand's voice was almost God's voice, right? The brand has spoken, and that's the 100% truth of it. That's changed, right? So a lot of additions and layerings that you would build in a brand, for example, now is how others are speaking about your brand. I think that's important as well, and he spoke about it. So for us, if I take a category which a lot of specifiers talk about is lighting, right? A lot of us as consumers don't know what lights to be put in. I don't care. I don't understand. It's technical. You have an ecosystem then who speaks about your product. So how do you engage with that ecosystem to actually speak about your product well becomes important. I think that's what Sana covered. Influencers today, big conversation point, right? And they've become quasi-marketeers today. But even when you use influencers, how do you use them in a more authentic way? What are your choice of influencers? What's the frequency you use them for? What's the conversation they should be having? So that it's a little more authentic. I think authenticity and response time are the two things that I would peg, right? Authenticity, not just from a brand voice point of view, but everybody who's speaking about your brand, how do you ensure that you allow it to be authentic? A lot of times we don't allow it to be authentic, right? So I think that space for it to be authentic, I think that's what's important uh, very much. And I think the second thing, of course, is response time. And sometimes you have to be brave, right? In my current industry, it's a product. I used to work in insurance before this, health insurance, right? So a lot of personal family issues that can come up with a brand. Sometimes you have to be brave and have that conversation and put it out there. I think that's also important in the world of social media today, right?
That's true. So you spoke about authenticity and response time, and of course, collaborating with influencers. Now, a lot of times, what is seen also that influencers are given brand guidelines, and people they become influencers because of their own content primarily, and when they see in an influencer, they should also believe in that brand. That's how it looks authentic. But when there are brand guidelines, there are a lot of brands who are actually giving check boxes that this is to be done, this is to be done, and it looks very like an ad which consumers are more often than not. And in the beginning, you mentioned about the short attention span. They actually do not watch it then. And of course, it's a brand, consumers, influencers, everyone's waste of time, to be honest. On those lines, how do you categorize collaborating with them with a proper, how do you maintain that authenticity with them?
All marketeers and all CMOs are guilty of it, me included. And it's a journey you learn, right? Because when you start this journey, most of us would say, this is how my product should come in. This many seconds, you have to speak about my product. You cannot go around it and, just talk about everything else and not my product. And then you suddenly realize the engagement rates have dropped, right? You'll see, oh, he gets 8% engagement. Why is he getting only 4% engagement on my posts? And the answer that you will always get back is, because you did not let me do it my way. People follow me because I have a certain style. I have a certain type of content that they like to hear about. And you see the influencer community also changing. So, you've got obviously the micro influencers, but some of the macro influencers today are also very specific about which brands and categories they will work with. How much will they allow a brand to interfere in their creative process? Because it's a creative process, right? It's content. And you see that shift happening and marketeers and content creators evolving. And it's gradual, right? Everybody, as a marketer, you always feel like my product needs to come first. So you have to eventually learn and let go. It's a process.
If I can just
Yes,
add.
I think you have something to add.
Yeah, I think, very truly, I completely resonate with what Anika said. I think all of us as marketing, we do want to have the best face representing our brand. But sometimes we also have to take a call. I think one of the biggest battles we need to fight is in the selection process itself. Who do we select to be, the one, or to be the set of influencers, or the one big celebrity, because, but then that person takes away all your budgets, right? So who represents you is a big decision. So it depends on, I think, what the brand wants. So if someone wants to ride on a big celebrity, then you get someone who's big. Or if you want your brand to be the hero, then you look at, smaller, less well-known faces, however, who have a very strong connect with their audience. So, micro, nano influence, so on and so forth. They take a set of them with the same amount of budgets. So that's something that one has to decide, right? And I think that's I think a lot of the battle goes there in terms of who do you finally pick.
So, following up with this authenticity again, when we talk that, with the engagement drop, or when we talk about, our brand should be the core message. Now, every brand definitely has its own message to give out. How do you take the feedback? How do you incorporate the feedback of your internal as well as external stakeholders, and while also ensuring that you're not diluting the brand's message, but also maintaining that authenticity that the consumers are looking forward for? Anika?
I think feedback now is real time. You put something out there, you get feedback literally in 30 minutes. Either it's worked or it's not worked. So I think a lot of our consumer inciting processes are also evolving and changing. You used to do a brand track maybe 2 times a year. That's not relevant anymore, right? Because by the time my brand track comes, something has changed either in the environment or, what we are putting out there, etc. So I think a lot of real-time consumer loops are available. For categories like ours, for example, e-commerce, reviews and ratings is, I think, the best consumer feedback that we literally get in real time to fix. And as a process, for example, in the organization, we now have all teams who are mandated to go through that personally. So every product manager, when a product launches, will go through customer reviews and read them on their own, not a consumer insight team giving them like one page where you actually read it and you read it after 2 months and the damage is done. So I think the one big shift which has happened is that there are a lot of real-time consumer loops that are available, and we should use some of them. So that's something that we've started to do actively in terms of getting feedback. You also get a lot of good feedback from investor communities. So we are a listed company, for example. They do their own channel checks. They have, and when you have a conversation with them, you will get true feedback in terms of directionally how you are doing. So you have to collate the feedback from several sources, right? You have the consumers who are giving it to you real time. You have your stakeholders, which you've always taken feedback from, retailers, trade community, etc. But there are others. You've got your employees who can give you straight feedback if there is an open culture that you sort of build over a period of time and take feedback onto. So multiple feedback loops, much more real time. Of course, structured feedback loops are important, but I think unstructured real-time feedback loops equally important. And a lot of what you will see D2C founders doing today, they go and speak to customers themselves. I think that's the best sort of way to do it, because that conversation, when a senior management or a founder themselves go and speak to somebody who's actually using their product, is the best feedback that you can get.
Sarah, your thoughts?
So yeah, on feedback, I agree. I mean, real time and the more. So if you take feedback from a diverse group of people, I think that's the ideal way. So because you have your own viewpoint from a marketing standpoint, but then if you take viewpoints from different set of stakeholders, just let me take a simple example. Let's say I'm talking about a new contact lens ad campaign, right? So one is feedback from, let's say, our agency or our, let's say, legal or regulatory approvers. But also in our case, we also need to be factually correct with what we're saying. So if I'm talking about a contact lens that corrects near vision, but in the ad, in the interest of creativity, or when I'm showing the problem, I'm showing that the person cannot see something far away, then I'm factually wrong. So I may have the best creative out in the world, but when a trained professional sees it, they will say, oh, you are the leaders in this industry and you don't even know which error you're correcting. So I think that's just one example. Another example could also be that something new may come out of the blue. For example, let's say we are thinking of launching a new product, and one might think, colored lenses. So I'll just give an example. Recently, we had some activations in colleges, and one might assume that colored contact lenses are usually worn by a female audience or female consumers. But actually, we saw in that college event that most of it actually male students who wanted to try how they would look in a blue colored contact lens. Now, I don't know what's the, consumer journey over there, but it was just an interesting, feedback point that we got, that in a college event with an equal mix of students ratio, somehow we saw, the male students coming in and very eagerly, more enthusiastically trying out our colored lenses. So I think feedback from diverse backgrounds, I think gives you a more holistic and lets you touch upon, thought areas which you might not have even thought of. So.
Thank you, Sana, for your precious time and staying with us. Thank you so much.